Your Excellencies, Honorable Demitu Ambisa, Minister of Science and Technology, the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Carlos Lopez, Executive Secretary of AEC, and our host today, Dr. Eugene Owusu, UNDP Resident Representative in Ethiopia and UN Coordinator, University Vice Chancellors among us, scholars from Africa and the world at large, invitees from the world of business and commerce, ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely happy to be here. I'm extremely happy to return to Ethiopia, and I'm also extremely glad to be part of the deliberations of today. I'd like to thank you, Adam, for your very generous introductions. I'd also like to thank you, all of you, for accepting to come to this conference jointly organized by the Economic Commission for Africa, the United Nations Development Program, and of course, the African Development Bank. Dr. Carlos, many thanks for hosting us. This is the 9th in a series of the African Economic Conference. Madame Zuma, thank you very much for gracing this occasion with your presence. I know that you have a very heavy agenda these days, indeed. Now, the importance of this conference is that every year it attracts you policymakers, members of civil society, and us rather humbler economists to come out here and discuss the challenges facing our continent. This year we decided to invite some African university vice chancellors specifically so that we could interact, and you are going to enjoy some of the things they're going to be saying later on in the 3-day program. I would also heartily like to say that I welcome all of you researchers that have contributed papers to this conference, and of course the joint staffs of the 3 institutions that have worked very hard to make this conference a reality. Now I must say, ladies and gentlemen, that we have a saying in Uganda that when the big guns have spoken, imagine boom, 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 the small ones should not be heard at all. So, ideally I should not have spoken at all, but I also happen to be representing a rather big gun. So I bring you greetings from Dr. Kaberuka, President of the African Development Bank. He holds the theme of our 3-day conference, Knowledge, Innovation for Africa's Transformation, in very high regard indeed. And he's what you might call a true believer. The theme of today touches on many things that he has tried to do in his close to 10-year tenure at the ADB, the emphasis on infrastructure, boosting the private sector in Africa, promoting science and technology, and developing capacities in the public sector. Unfortunately, he has not been able to make the trip to Addis Ababa this week, caught up in discussing programs to support our member countries that have been affected by the Ebola disease, a disease which in some respects has defined the extent of our ignorance in Africa and globally, but which has also raised our resolve to use our knowledge and innovativeness to fight back. His message to you all, which applies equally to addressing the epidemics confronting Africa, but also the challenges of Africa's transformation, is the following: that defy those that would declare defeat, indeed sign the act of surrender even before the real battle has begun. That where there is a will, there is a way. Now let me briefly come to the theme of this conference in my brief welcoming remarks. The knowledge innovation for Africa's transformation is, to my mind, a very powerful theme indeed. It is extremely attractive and is very inspirational. I therefore commend our joint staffs, including our media teams, for the many hours that they put together to find the right tone of the conference, the right inflection. The theme is certainly different from the ones we have used in the past. However, even as we jubilate at the innovativeness of finding the right theme for this conference, a provocative observer and listener could ask you, what knowledge do you have in mind? In the broad scheme of things, how do you determine innovativeness? Is it a mere recycling of ideas? Where do you want to transform Africa to? So the point I'm trying to make is that underlying our very attractive theme are a number of extremely tough and even ugly realities. Those of political economy, abject poverty, inadequate and fragile leadership, uninspiring education curricula, broad gender inequalities and disparities, and inequality in access to new technologies. So, looking ahead, how can our conference make a real difference? A lot has been said already, so I'm going to be extremely brief. I think it can make a difference by being a clarion call to action. When you look across the African policy landscape today, it's fully packed with themes covering as many subjects as challenges. There's not a single challenge on which we don't have some kind of prescription out there in the marketplace. I always like to cite the example of one of my favorite politicians, David Kenneth Kaunda, but not from today, but 50 years ago. In 1963, David Kaunda was only 38 years old and was trying to win power for his party. And so he presented in Lusaka his manifesto, the manifesto which he called When UNIP Becomes Government. UNIP, of course, was his United National Independence Party of Zambia. He said in that manifesto 50 years ago that he would use the resources of Zambia, which is copper, to eliminate poverty, ignorance, and disease. And you can imagine, these are the things we have been trying to fight and try to eliminate for 50 years and more. And Madame Zuma is spearheading Africa 2063 is still the same themes. So, 50 years ago, we really had already the kind of prescription. So what has been lacking all along is really implementation, is action. So, finally, when I was a very young student in Uganda, those many years ago, I used to walk past Makerere University. Those of you that know Makerere University, it had very humble origins. It was a trade school. It was really set up to train technicians and plumbers for the colonial government. It later on, of course, became a big center of learning in Africa. It had a few problems, of course, but even today some people grumble about when Makerere was Makerere a while back. But in any case, when I was a very young person, I would see this very big gate to Makerere, and there was an insignia or a herald at arms for the university in gold, of course it was then. And there was a dictum on this insignia, and the dictum was pro futuro edificamus. Those of you that know a bit of Latin can even guess. Futuro meaning future, edificamus meaning the edifice. It really means we build for the future. I therefore hope and trust that is we delve in discussions of various types in these 3 days on our chosen theme of knowledge and innovation for Africa's transformation, that we shall be conscious of the importance of moving from aspiration to action, of building for the future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.